Are you ready for this? We're gonna do the mother of all rent versus own analysis videos right now. We're gonna talk about the benefits of owning, the benefits of renting. You're gonna meet my landlord, Rose. We're gonna give you tips and tricks. It's gonna be a blast. You're gonna learn something, you're gonna laugh, and we're gonna have a good time. Let's go. I forgot to tell you who I am. I'm Brian Harris with Harris Mortgage, Ventura, California. Oh, that's funny, Rumi. Here, I got a good one for you. Why does Snoop Dogg carry around an umbrella? Faux drizzle! Oh, someone's at the door. Oh, it's my landlord, Rose. I'm late on my rent. Goes nothing. Hi, Rose.
Hiya, deadbeat. Brian, you're late for your rent again.
Rose, I sent you an email and
pay me my rent.
Rose, look, something came up.
Yeah, something came up.
Rose, have you ever heard of Coachella? It's kind of like a big deal. Well, I had to get tickets that cost half of my rent for the month. Okay, I'm sorry. What did you want me to do?
You got to be kidding me.
I mean, look, Rose, you are a high priority for me. It goes Coachella, paying my rent, and then everything else below it. You are like my second highest priority.
If I wanted to pay my mortgage, I would not rent this house to you. I need you to pay my mortgage for me. Gosh, what a deadbeat.
Ow! You can't hit me like that.
I'm gonna give you 2 weeks. 2 more weeks.
If that didn't scare you away, let's get started. The benefits of renting. Benefit number 1 is cost. Typically, it's cheaper to rent. Also, don't have to come up with a big down payment. You need a security deposit and your first month's rent, and that's about it. The second benefit of renting is flexibility. So, for example, you're usually in a 1-year lease or month-to-month lease. If you don't like the school your kids are in, then just move. Move to the school district you want to live in. You don't like your neighbors, move. If you want to live in a nicer place, just move. If you want to live in a cheaper place, just move out of this neighborhood. What I'd like to see you do is to buy with a small down payment, small as you can, 3.5%. Then, if you have to move, you buy again with a small down payment. You rent out your old house. You can use 75% of the rent on a signed lease to help you qualify on your new house. So now you're a landlord. Plus you're able to move. By buying a house, you're not necessarily locked in. But if you move a lot, if you're gonna have to sell to buy, then the costs do add up. It costs about 6% when you sell a house. There can be 1 to 2% in closing costs when you buy a house. So if you have a lot of turnover, buying and selling, the fees eat into all that wealth you may be creating. I sort of hijacked this point that we're supposed to be talking about the benefits of renting. So a benefit of renting is flexibility. You can up and move for the most part when you want, whenever you want. What's up, Patricia? Nice dog. Okay, the third benefit of renting is predictability. I'm filming here from Lowe's because you won't be here. So you have a predictable payment in the short term. And I add short term because a benefit of owning is that you have a predictable payment in the long term. If you have a 30-year fixed, your payment is set for 30 years, then it goes away. For renting, you will have rent increases over time, but at any point in time, your rent is your housing expense, and that's it. You do not have to pay for repairs and maintenance.
Mom, you're fanning the flame. Thank you, sir. Close it up.
I live in a house that's 10 years old, going on 11. Last year we changed the water heater, the AC went out, appliances are breaking, so they don't make them like they used to. We call that the joys of homeownership. But as a renter, if the hot water heater goes out, you pick up the phone. If you have an electrical problem, you pick up the phone. If it rains and you have a leak, you just pick up the phone. And that's the benefit of renting. let's talk about the benefits of ownership now. Number one, you own an appreciating asset. Is it guaranteed to appreciate? No. Has it historically? Yes. Is it an inflation-friendly asset? Yes, it has. So you think back to your parents and they say, hey, I bought this house for however many thousands of dollars, and I could go to the movies for 10 cents, and I could get eggs for 5 cents, and then you look at how much all this stuff costs now, and some of these things are just adjusted for inflation. Others have actually appreciated. Some have declined when you account for inflation. Real estate is an inflation-friendly asset. Another great reason to own it. So it's appreciating asset and it's inflation-friendly. Because it's appreciating asset is not the only reason to buy real estate. If you bought a house for $500,000 in 30 years, you made no money on it, it's still worth $500,000. Well, at least now it's paid for and you have an asset worth $500,000. If you rented, you don't have anything to show for it. If it appreciated only 2% annually after 30 years, that house would be worth $905,000. If that $500,000 house appreciated at 5% annually over 30 years, after 30 years, your house would be worth $2.15 million. If you stuck with that initial 30-year mortgage, you'd have it paid off. Quick little 3-question quiz since I'm at my old school. How many people live in the United States? How many people live in China? How many people live in the world? I always said 300 million people in the United States, but that's wrong. 325 million. Now, census says in 2050, I don't think that sounds too far off, there's going to be 400 million people in the United States. So, another 75 million people that need to sleep somewhere. There's a lot of arguments for why prices will move up or down in the short term and even in the long term, but for me, the fact that there's that population growth gives me confidence in owning real estate in the long term. And there's 1.3 billion people in China, 7.7 people in the world. Just things you need to know. The second benefit of homeownership is tax benefits. So buying a house typically moves you from someone who uses the standard deduction to someone who uses the itemized deduction. So that just means you write a lot of stuff off, keep your receipts. Like this. One of my kids is gonna love this. The third benefit of homeownership is forced savings. So what it does is part of your principal and interest payment is principal, and that's like putting money in a savings account that it's difficult to access. So it's not impossible to access, but it takes, you'd have to get a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance. You can always sell the house too. The third benefit of ownership is privacy and control. So if you want to paint your house purple, you're able to. It's your house. You can do what you want. Sometimes if you live in an HOA, there might be some restrictions, but typically if it's a single family house, you can do what you want to do. You want to get a dog? Get a dog. You don't have to ask somebody, is it okay if I get a dog? You want to get a dog? Get a dog. You get a cat. I don't like cats, but you want a cat? Get a cat. If you own your house, you can paint it like this. Also, if you rent, there might be things you want to change. Oh, I'd love if this feature was changed, but and you say, hey, can I change it to your landlord? He'll say, sure, go ahead, improve my house for me. I don't mind. I'm not paying for it, but go ahead and do it. So when you own, those little tweaks you want to make, you make them, and it's save the receipts. And when you sell the house, it adds to your cost basis. So I said privacy and control, but that's mostly just control. I guess privacy is you just don't have to answer to anybody, and you don't have somebody poking in your business about how you're living your life. Now, the fifth and final benefit of homeownership is it's the intangibles. You can't really put a price tag on it. Such things as stability, a feeling of belonging to your community, pride of ownership, meet your neighbors, which I probably should do. I've been here 10 years. That's something I should do too. There's positives of homeownership that aren't just financial. Now, why are you here? Let's get to our rent versus own example. Now let's start with the tax benefits. I'm recording this in October of 2018. There's some new tax rules this year, one of which is that the standard deduction has almost doubled. It's now $24,000 for a married couple. For our example, we'll assume the renter is married, taking the largest deduction. Just know if you're single, the tax benefits of owning will be even greater. Our renter will have a $2,500 per month rent. Rule of thumb is that you shouldn't use more than 30% of your gross income on rent. So let's assume they make $100,000. Maybe it's two people working for $50,000 each. Maybe it's 60-40, 70-30, but a combined household income of $100,000. Now let's look at the impact for the standard deduction on our renter. Our renter earns $100,000. If you apply the standard deduction, it'll decrease their taxes by over $5,800. In the lending world, we're always looking at monthly numbers. That translates to a benefit of $484 a month. All right, now let's buy a house. So why did I pick this house? For one, it's a close drive. 2, it's currently listed for sale. 3, Zillow projects it would rent for $2,500. So we have a good comparison of if you're renting for $2,500 or you can buy it. And that's a true rent versus own. So this is real life, real number. I don't know Tyler, but he seems like a cool guy in his picture. I'm gonna give him a call, send him his video, that's for sure. There's down payment assistance programs. There's low down programs. You might want to put 20% down and avoid mortgage insurance altogether, but I don't want to make this video about loan options. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use an FHA loan in our analysis. It's a great loan program. It's flexible with credit, it's flexible with income, it's low down. That's what we're doing. It could be money I've saved, it could be a gift. Somehow, some way, legitimately, you have $25,000 to put down. That'll leave you plenty of money for your down, your closing costs. You'll have a little money left over afterwards. So the FHA loan's gonna look like this. Bam, 3.5% down payment. Mortgage payment, bam, $2,650. Don't forget Uncle Sam, property tax. Bam. You gotta get hazard insurance. Bam. Lastly, mortgage insurance. Put it together and what do you get? $35.94. I don't want to go into the weeds, so I'm just going to flash up real quick all the fees involved in the loan. If you want to pause, you can check them out. There you go. Now, if you make $100,000, then you can qualify for this loan. If you have $25,000 in your pocket, then you have enough money for the down payment, closing costs, prepaid expenses, funding your impound account, everything. We haven't made a strong case yet for homeownership, but the table's been set for a nice debate. The second benefit of homeownership, like we said, is the tax benefits. If you look at the screen, you'll see in the first year, the total deductions for our theoretical buyer would be $34,449. Because this figure is larger than the $24,000 standard deduction for a married couple, our buyer will itemize. Okay, so double check all this with your CPA. I'm not a CPA, I can't give tax advice. Once you own a house and you itemize, the benefit isn't only deducting housing expenses, but it also activates other expenses that you have that you might not be able to deduct otherwise. There are limitations to this, but many people are able to deduct some medical and dental expenses. In California, you can deduct your state income tax in addition to your property tax. Those two combined, you can deduct up to a limit of $10,000. You can also deduct unreimbursed business expenses. These could include business miles you're not reimbursed for, teachers who buy a bunch of stuff for their classroom, and job education and training. Lastly is gifts to charity. These could be physical donations. If you're like me, we have 2 girls. They're growing out of shoes and out of clothes, and there's toys they don't play with anymore, so we donate a lot of this and we get a receipt and we can deduct it. And also cash donation, money you put in the dish at church or donations you make with your hard-earned money. The point I wanted to make is that once you itemize because you bought a house, that's great. You get to deduct some of your housing expenses, but there's also other expenses that you're able to deduct as well.
You don't even know what a write-off is.
Do you?
No, I don't.
But they do. And they're the ones writing it off.
So for our theoretical buyer, I added a couple of deductions for their state tax and also for some donations, because it's not just the housing expenses that you can deduct, but if you itemize, it activates other deductions that are available to you that you lose if you're a renter. For our buyer, they have a monthly tax benefit of $789 per month after itemized deductions. When you deduct the $789 from your housing expense, your net payment is now $2,805. So it's not quite down to the $2,500 in rent, but it's getting there. Now the last piece to talk about for the comparison is forced savings. It's your principal payment. In the first year, you will have made $8,134 of payments towards your principal. On a monthly basis, that works out to $678 a month. And now we're under that $2,500 rent payment. Now let's put it together. If I wanted to be misleading, I would say $2,500 in rent is equivalent to $2,107 in payments for the homeowner after adjustments. But that wouldn't be completely honest. Because we use the tax benefits for the owner, there's also the standard deduction that everybody gets, that the renter will receive. So once you make that adjustment, it costs about $70 more to own than to rent on a monthly basis after you adjust both the rent and the housing expense for the owner. Now for the renters, I threw in renter's insurance. I just gave you a little tiny hit for that. I didn't talk about it, but it's something, if you're renting, that you should get. Public service announcement. Lean in. 4 steps to homeownership. Number 1, find out what your usable income is. If you have a salary job, it's your salary. If you're self-employed, if you're paid on commission, it's a little bit different. Get with a lender. I'd love to help you out. But get with your local lender, figure that out. That's an important number to know. Number 2, make sure that your rent is 30% of that number or less. If you're paying more than that in rent, you gotta move. 3, you need to take 45% of your income. That goes to your rent, and the balance you set aside in savings that you don't touch. So if your rent is 25% of your usable income, you're setting 20% of your usable income aside every month. That's 45%. If it's 30%, your rent is 30%, you're setting aside 15%. So you set aside that balance. You get used to making that big payment, and at the same time, you're setting money aside. Number 4, take that money you set aside, that's your down payment. Okay, you're gonna now buy a place, low down payment option, so that your payment, your housing payment, is 40% of your income. So you've been setting aside 45% of your income, you're used to that big payment. Your actually payment's gonna drop a little bit. You're use that money you've set aside. You're now in the ownership game. Okay, those are the 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Start with number 1. You need to figure out what your usable income is. If you need help with that, feel free to contact me. Thank you. In 10 years, you would have paid $345,000 in rental insurance. And I'm sorry to say this, but you'd have nothing to show for it. Assuming your rent increased by 3%, $2,500 in rent today would be $3,360 in 10 years. While with your 30-year mortgage, your monthly payment was still the same. It's stuck at $2,650. Of course, you still have to pay property tax, hazard insurance, and mortgage insurance, although your mortgage insurance will have decreased because it's based on your loan balance. As your loan balance decreases, your mortgage insurance will decrease as well. To contrast the $345,000 in rent, you would have paid over $100,000 in principal payments to reduce your loan balance. Now, there's no guarantee of appreciation, but if your property appreciated at 3% on average, after 10 years, you would have generated over $180,000 in new equity. If the house appreciated at 5%, you would have generated another $149,000 on top of that. Well, what's up, everybody? You're still here? You're still here? Wow, you're still here. I love you. Thank you. I put a lot of effort into this. You're still here? Oh man, I appreciate you. Leave a message, leave me a comment, I'll write back. Like, subscribe, share. Do all those things that people do on social media. Let's recap. You know your bennies. You know your benefits of owning. You know your benefits of renting. You know what adjustments to make to your mortgage and housing payment to know what's my net mortgage I'm really making after all my benefits. You know the difference between the standard deduction and itemized deduction now. You know that if you make $100,000, you have $25,000 you can access somehow. You can buy a $525,000 house. You know if you make less than that, you can buy a smaller house. You know if you make more than that, you can buy a bigger house. Just get in where you fit in, but start owning. Unless you have immediate plans to move, you should own. Never ask a barber if you need a haircut. So I'm probably not the best person to ask if it's better to own than to rent, because I put people in houses for a living. But you know, it really actually feels good. It's the best part of this job. And I truly feel that homeownership is a great first step to building that financial freedom that you know we all strive for. So hey, keep up the good work. If you're watching this video, you're doing good things. If you watch this video and you're renting, I think homeownership is in your future. Let's give a big round of applause to the star of the show, Rose the landlord.
Gosh, what a deadbeat.
She was awesome. So until next time, thank you so much. See you soon.